When the wind still whispered through the baobab trees and the night sky hummed with ancestral drums, the village of Mbidu lived under the gaze of stars that remembered all things. In those days, before names were chained by shame and color, before men built walls between shadows and sun, there walked a boy called Tali, a name meaning one who listens to the earth. Tali was born in the season of drought, under the crooked crescent moon that hung like a broken tusk. The griots said children born under such moons are caught between silence and thunder, that their lives would echo like drums in empty caves, uncertain but unforgettable. He had skin like river clay warmed by the sun, and eyes that caught moonlight like a basin. But his hunger was not just for food. He hungered for something older than bread, something lost to time, dignity. And one day, this hunger led him to the Brass Pot, a white-tiled restaurant at the edge of the rich city, a place where people wore pride like perfume and ate with mouths too full to say thank you. But before that day came, before Tali's name became a riddle passed through fire, we must ask the first question, the one all great stories begin with. Can a man be full and still starve? This story is not just about hunger of belly. It is about the famine of the spirit, the drought of kindness, and the long rains of truth that come when no one expects them. Now listen, child of the flame, for the wind is drumming. The road that led from Bidu to the city was lined with whispering grass and the bones of forgotten gods. Tali walked it with bare feet and a stomach that spoke louder than the crickets. His mother had died with a song on her lips, and his father had vanished into the mines beneath the mountain, swallowed by the greedy earth. So, Tali walked alone. But not quite. There was always Nuru, the old blind man who said he could see dreams in the dust. Tali, Nuru had croaked once. Never trust a fire that does not crackle. What does that mean? Tali had asked. It means, said the old man, sometimes what warms you also burns you. Tali didn't understand. But now, as he reached the city gates and smelled roasted meats he couldn't afford, the words returned, softly, like the first breeze before a storm. The Brass Pot was not made for boys like Tali. Its glass windows reflected the world as it wanted to be, polished, perfumed, and pale. Inside, behind a silver counter, stood a man named Bartholomew Clay, owner and keeper of all the things he thought pure. He wore a white apron like a badge and spoke with a tongue dipped in vinegar. He saw Tali standing at the doorway, skin dusty, shirt torn, lips cracked. Bartholomew narrowed his eyes and snapped, "We don't serve beggars. Go eat from the trash if you're that hungry." And just like that, the door to dignity slammed shut. Customers laughed. Some looked away. One woman took a picture and posted it with the caption, "Trash belongs with trash." But Tali did not cry. He only bowed his head, like the wind before the storm. And then, quietly, he walked to the back alley. There, beside the overflowing bin, he sat. And the pigeons watched. And the wind listened. But not all eyes are cruel. From behind the alley, a small voice spoke. "You don't belong there." Tali turned. A little girl, no more than 10, in a red dress that didn't quite fit. Her skin pale like flour, but her eyes held something familiar, loneliness. "I saw what he did," she whispered. Tali nodded. "It's okay. I'm used to it." "No one should be used to that," she said. "Come with me." He hesitated, but her hand was warm, and her voice, it reminded him of his mother's. So he followed. She led him past the market, past the painted walls, into a courtyard shaded by mango trees. There sat a woman with long braids and skin kissed by the same sun as Tali's. "You brought him here?" she asked, startled. "He's hungry," the girl said. "Papa was mean to him." The woman's eyes widened. "Your papa?" "Bartholomew." The girl nodded slowly. And in that moment, the drums of fate began to rumble. That night, the city wind carried more than dust. It carried whispers. In the Brass Pot, Bartholomew found his daughter missing. Panic rose in him like spoiled milk. He never imagined she would find Mama Zama, the healer he had abandoned years ago. Yes, Mama Zama, the woman he once loved, but who he cast out when he learned her skin would darken his child. He had bribed papers, lied to friends, made a new life, buried the past. But now that past was knocking, with Tali beside his daughter. And so the wind asked the question again. Can you bury truth where roots still grow? As Tali sat under Mama Zama's roof, he learned that not all mothers are born through blood. She fed him ugali and spinach. She cleaned his wounds. She sang to him in the old language, the one that made bones remember. And then, from a carved gourd, she poured a story. There was once a king who built a palace on the backs of others. One day, he looked out and saw no one to rule. Why? Because the roots had risen and swallowed him whole. Tali understood. Something deeper was brewing. He was no longer just a hungry boy. He had stepped into a tale older than himself. Bartholomew, the king of his own false palace, did not know yet, but the roots were stirring. That night, Bartholomew Clay could not sleep. The restaurant closed, the lights dimmed, but the image of Tali's eyes, those deep, silent eyes, kept him awake. They were not angry. They were patient. That unsettled him more than fury. He poured himself a glass of red wine and stood in front of the mirror in his bedroom. But in the glass, he saw not himself, but the face of Mama Zama. You see, time does not forget the truth. It only waits for silence. He remembered her, Zama of the hills, the healer with laughter like waterfall foam and hands that healed broken birds. She had loved him without question. But when his family discovered her skin, they'd spit on the ground. You are too white to love that shade, his uncle had warned. Bartholomew had chosen silence over love, safety over soul. He left her, pregnant, humiliated, stripped of all but her name. And now, the girl he raised as pure had led the very boy he insulted to her true mother's arms. What kind of man denies his own roots? He looked again in the mirror. This time, there was no reflection at all. In Mama Zama's home, Tali slept for the first time in days. Outside, the wind played with the mango leaves. Inside, the girl, her name was Amara, meaning grace, sat by the fire, twisting strands of her hair. "Do you hate my father?" she asked Mama Zama. The healer looked into the flames. "I do not hate, but I do remember. Why didn't you tell me you were my mother?" Mama Zama stirred the pot gently. "Because he told the world I was dead, and I wanted you to live." "But I felt it," Amara whispered. "I always felt something missing." Mama Zama smiled. "Even a tree raised in another forest still hears the call of its true soil." Then Amara asked the question only children dare to ask plainly. "Will Papa ever change?" Mama Zama looked up. Outside, a single white feather floated from the sky, rising instead of falling. "Some things must fall to rise again," she said softly. "We shall see." At dawn, Tali walked into the forest nearby. He needed silence. He remembered his village. The way they called him useless orphan. The way the elders pitted him and the youth avoided him. He was neither boy nor man, neither here nor there. In the forest, he heard a sound, a steady, slow drumbeat. He followed it. Under the roots of a giant Irako tree, he found an old man with skin like cracked wood and a necklace of bones. The man was blind, but his fingers moved like spiders on the drum. "I have been waiting," he said. "For what?" Tali asked. "For the boy whose hunger would crack the sky." Tali frowned. "I don't understand." The man pointed to a snake coiled near the roots. "See that snake? It sheds skin, but never its fangs. Some people are the same." Tali nodded. "But you," the man whispered, "you must shed hunger, not for food, but for belonging. You are not made to fit in. You are made to change the drumbeat." Then he handed Tali a small carved drum. "When the time comes, strike it. Truth will answer." In the following days, whispers began to spread. People spoke of a boy who had been humiliated at the brass pot. Some laughed. Others frowned. A few reposted the photo again with jokes. But one woman in the city, an old journalist named Makesai, remembered something. She had once written about Mama Zama, years ago. She remembered how the healer vanished, and how Bartholomew Clay suddenly had a daughter with no birth records from any hospital. So Makesai began to dig. And when journalists dig in Africa, it is not shovels they use, it is memory. Grandmothers, grocers, gravekeepers. She found them all. She pieced together the truth. Then, one morning, the city awoke to a headline. Restaurateur denied hungry teen food. Boy turns out to be daughter's savior. But who is her real mother? The article included a photo of Tali, Amara, and Mama Zama at the mango tree. The story burst like fire through dry grass. Bartholomew Clay sat alone in his office, watching his phone light up with messages. Coward. Liar. Racist. Father of none. He wanted to hide, but the world had grown too small. Then knock. 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 He opened the door. There stood Amara. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She simply said, "You lied. I protected you," he stammered. "No," she whispered. "You protected yourself." Behind her, Tali stepped forward. He held out the carved drum. "Do you know what this is?" Tali asked. Bartholomew looked confused. "It's what people strike," Tali said, "when they can no longer strike people." Then he struck it. Boom. The sound was deep, ancient, and sorrowful. From the restaurant walls, a crack formed. But not in stone, in story. And from that moment on, the brass pot would never serve food without also serving memory. That night, Mama Zama lit a fire under the moonless sky. Around it sat Amara, Tali, Makesai, and even Nuru the blind seer, who had arrived whispering, "The drum called me." Mama Zama threw herbs into the flame, and as the smoke curled, she spoke. "We began with a question. Can a man be full and still starve? Now I ask another. What happens when a lie eats more than a truth can grow?" The fire popped. The mango tree rustled. Tali looked into the flames and saw the faces of all who had called him less. And then he saw his own face, not smaller, but larger than them all. In the stillness of a moonless night, the mango tree swayed not with wind, but with memory. Mama Zama sat in silence, her hands tracing lines in the dirt. Behind her, the drum that had been struck still whispered in its own language, low, sad, relentless. Tali approached and sat beside her. The embers from the fire glowed softly on his cheeks. "Mama Zama," he asked, "why did he hate us? What did we do to be treated like rot?" She looked at him. In her eyes, stars reflected, not from the sky above, but from pain buried long ago. "There is a scar beneath this tree," she said softly. "One you cannot see, but you can feel if you are quiet enough." Tali listened. "I once buried my voice here," she continued. "The day Bartholomew turned from me." She pulled from her pouch a small cloth bundle. Inside, a rusted bracelet, an old baby tooth, a charred note with half of her name burned away. "These are the things he left behind when he erased me," she said. "He told the world you and I were myths. But myths return when the truth is dry." Tali bowed his head. "But you," Mama Zama added, placing the bracelet in his hand, "you were never meant to be small. You are the seed after fire." The next morning, Mama Zama led Tali and Amara to a place called Ngomzie Kimya, the Walls of Silence. There, 6 elders sat on carved stones, their skin like bark, their gazes slow and eternal. This was the old council, keepers of the forgotten word. "You have come with broken lineage," one elder croaked. Tali stepped forward. "We came with truth," Amara added. "We came with questions no longer willing to kneel." Another elder, a woman with cowrie shells in her hair, lifted a calabash of water and spilled it at their feet. "Then let the ancestors answer." Suddenly, the ground beneath them shimmered. A hot wind swirled, and from the water rose visions. Zama dancing barefoot with a young Bartholomew under the stars, full of promise. A slap, a scream, a pregnancy revealed, a courtroom with fake papers and cold stares. A bribe passed under a table. And finally, Amara, a baby, held by a nurse who whispered, "You will never know where you came from." Then the wind stopped. The water stilled. "Bartholomew did not only betray Zama," said the eldest elder. "He betrayed the circle." "What circle?" Tali asked. "The circle of truth, of ancestry, of skin and blood not ranked, but remembered." As they walked back from the council, Amara saw a white dove on the ground, wings unbroken, but it would not fly. She knelt beside it. "Fly," she whispered. But the dove only blinked. Mama Zama joined her. "It is like your father," she said. "He was never wounded by us, only afraid to rise with us." Tali approached. "Then what now?" "We wait," Zama said. "And we prepare." "Prepare for what?" She looked up at the sun, now dim behind passing clouds. "For what happens when lies lose their shadows." Amara gently picked up the dove and carried it home. Days passed. The city's whispers turned to roars. Activists camped outside the brass pot. Customers vanished. Former friends turned away. Bartholomew, for the first time, was alone. One morning, Mama Zama announced a feast of names. "This is not revenge," she said. "It is remembering." She cooked with Amara and Tali. Jollof, spiced yam, millet cake. Every dish bore a name of an ancestor. When guests arrived, poor and rich, black and brown, griots, and orphans. She gave each a leaf-wrapped package. "Eat," she said, "and speak the name of someone history tried to erase." People wept. They laughed. They remembered. Tali stood, holding up his drum. "I strike this not to protest, but to summon," he said. Then boom, the drum answered. Mama Zama raised her hand. "Let this be known. You cannot erase what has been rooted in the soil of truth." That night, under the stars, a knock came at Mama Zama's door. It was Bartholomew. His face was tired, his clothes wrinkled, and in his hands, he held a small wooden box. "I came not to explain," he said, "but to return what was stolen." He opened the box. Inside, an anklet, a photo of young Zama, and a lock of Amara's hair from birth. "I kept them," he said quietly. "I told myself I'd burn them, but I couldn't." Mama Zama said nothing. Then, Bartholomew looked at Tali. "I am sorry. What I said to you, it wasn't about you. It was about the thing I buried long ago and could never look at again." Tali didn't smile, but he nodded. Bartholomew turned to Amara. "If you still call me father, I will try to earn it." Amara held her mother's hand. "You are my story's first wound. That doesn't mean you can't be part of the healing." And for the first time, Bartholomew wept. That night, the moon rose again. Full, silver, proud. And beneath her gaze, Mama Zama sang an old lullaby, one her own mother sang to her, in a tongue no longer spoken but deeply felt. Tali sat by the fire, holding the drum. Amara slept in Zama's arms. Bartholomew sat apart, silent, but present. And the wind that danced through the baobab leaves no longer whispered questions. It hummed something else. An answer. When truth returns, even the forgotten stars will shine again. The dry season had returned, and with it, the night fires. In Mama Zama's courtyard, they lit a sacred fire, not for cooking, not for warmth, but for seeing. The elders called it Mwenga wa Mzizi, the light of the root. When the fire was lit with ancestral oils and ground hibiscus, it burned a color not seen in daylight, deep orange, tinged with blue. Tali sat before the flame, holding the carved drum. Mama Zama handed him a gourd of bitter drink, one meant to wake memory. "This fire," she said, "does not burn wood. It burns silence." Tali drank. The wind stilled, and the fire began to whisper. In its dance, shadows formed. A village elder taking coins to exile a healer. A paper signed with forged names. A woman screaming behind hospital walls. And then, a boy, himself, wandering, alone, barefoot, past men who knew his name but called him nobody. Tali's hand trembled. "I thought my pain was just mine," he whispered. "No," Zama said. "It was planted by others, and watered by their fear." Bartholomew had begun visiting daily. He brought bread, books, questions. But trust is not restored with gifts, it is tested by time. One afternoon, Tali followed Bartholomew through the forest, curious. There, beneath the old mango tree, he overheard him whispering into a phone. "They still think I'm broken. Let them. A few donations, a few pressed tears, they'll forget everything." Tali's stomach twisted. He returned to the courtyard and told Zama and Amara. Zama simply nodded. A snake sheds skin to appear new, but the fangs stay sharp. Amara wept. "I thought he had changed." Tali clenched his fists. "He will never strike me again." Zama shook her head. "No, but you must not strike back with the same poison." Then she drew a circle in ash. "We will burn this betrayal, but with truth, not vengeance." That night, Nuru, the blind seer, visited with a warning. "I saw a leopard in my dream," he said, "but it wore a man's skin. And in its paws was your drum, Tali." Tali looked at his carved drum. It pulsed warm in his hand. "What does it mean?" he asked. "It means someone close is ready to steal what makes you you. Be wary. Leopards don't pounce when watched, only when forgotten." Mama Zama placed black chalk on Tali's forehead. "Let no one take your voice." A week later, Bartholomew announced a public apology in the city square. Hundreds gathered. Media cameras, clergy, activists. He stood on a stage and read from a script. "I acted from fear, from pride. I wronged those I love. I have no excuses." He cried. People clapped. But Mama Zama did not. Tali whispered, "He's acting." Amara watched her father. Her heart pulled in two directions, love and disgust. After the speech, Bartholomew approached them. "Do you forgive me now?" he asked. Zama leaned close and said quietly, You apologize to strangers. But never once did you look me in the eye and say my name." Bartholomew went silent. For in truth, he had never said it. Not once. That evening, a mysterious fire engulfed part of Mama Zama's courtyard. The mango tree was scorched. The carved drum cracked. But the heart of the fire told a different tale. No matches. No accelerant. No wind. Just one thing missing: Bartholomew. He had not returned since the public speech. And when Ma Kesai, the old journalist, investigated, she discovered something darker. A fake nonprofit, registered under Tali's name. Funded by Bartholomew. Framed as a reconciliation project. Tali's image used without consent. Zama said nothing. She lit incense and whispered into the wind. But Amara, she broke. She went to the city herself. Amara found her father at the restaurant. Now empty, for good. She stood at the counter, holding a photo of her as a baby in Zama's arms. "I wanted to believe in you," she said. Bartholomew looked tired. "I tried to protect you." "From what?" she asked. "From the truth? From your shame?" He looked away. "You used Tali," she continued. "You used me." He whispered. "I didn't know what else to do." Amara placed the photo on the counter. "Then learn." Alone. She turned and walked away. Outside, a single dove followed her. That night, back at the courtyard, the fire was lit again. Tali stood before it, his cracked drum in hand. "I thought he was my trial," Tali said. "But maybe my trial is not becoming like him." Zama smiled. "Now you understand," she said. "Forgiveness is not weakness. It is choosing not to pass down poison." Then the fire rose high, and in its light, the shadows twisted into something new. Not betrayal, but rebirth. Tali raised the drum and struck it. Boom. The crack sealed itself. The drum glowed. Since the firelight night, Tali's drum spoke even when he did not strike it. Soft rumbles at dawn. Quiet thuds at dusk. Like a heart learning to breathe again. Mama Zama said, "It hears your spirit. And your spirit is rising." Word had spread far beyond the city. In neighboring villages, people began to tell Tali's story. Not of a boy who was fed trash, but of a boy who fed truth to fire. Children carved their own small drums. Women painted their cheeks with ashes and hope. They called it the Wamsho, the awakening. Mama Zama brought out an old trunk wrapped in red banana leaves. Inside was the cloth of the dead, a ceremonial garment worn only when truth had been killed and must be resurrected. She draped it over Tali's shoulders. "Today, you no longer carry your pain. You wear it, so all can see. No more hiding." Tali looked at himself in the cracked mirror. The cloth was stitched with names: Zuri, McKenna, Nia, people erased by history. "Wear it with pride," Zama said. "But walk with care. Cloth can guide, or strangle, depending on how it's worn." A gathering was planned. A ritual council where Tali would speak before a crowd of 3,000 under the great flame tree in Kilima Plains. Mama Zama warned, "This is not a performance. It is reckoning." They arrived to chanting, to dancers with fire paint, to elders holding torches that burned without fuel. Tali stepped forward. The wind quieted. He spoke. "I was told to eat from the trash, but I found something sweeter than meat. I found memory. I found that silence is not peace. I found that forgiveness is not forgetting. And I found that I am not alone. So today, I do not ask for revenge. I ask for awakening." He struck his drum. The crowd responded, not with claps, but with rhythm. Hands on chests. Feet on earth. Mouths open in ancestral song. That night, Mama Zama took Tali and Amara to a sacred ground. Magofu Yatembo, the graveyard of elephants. "Why are we here?" Amara asked. Zama placed her hands on an old tusk buried in earth. "Because this is where the wise come to die, but leave their wisdom behind." Tali knelt, touching the cracked ivory. Suddenly, he felt something heavy but soft in his chest. A voice, not his own, whispered, "The world does not need new kings. It needs old wounds healed. You are not called to lead, but to remember." He opened his eyes, weeping, not from sadness, but from being seen. The next morning, news spread. The Kilima Plains ritual site had been vandalized. Drums smashed. Sacred stones painted over. The cloth of the dead stolen from its shrine. Some whispered the name of Bartholomew. Others denied it. But Tali knew, it didn't matter who. What mattered was why. "They fear the rebirth," Mama Zama said, "because it reminds them they were born wrong." Tali looked at the ashes of the stolen cloth. "Then we sing louder." That night, the people returned to Kilima, not to mourn, but to reclaim. Women ululated. Children drummed. Men wept openly. Tali stepped onto the stone altar in simple cloth, not royal garb. He lifted his drum, now split and bound in twine. He sang, "You called me waste. I became seed. You struck me down. I became drum. You burned my name. I became wind. I do not ask for space in your world. I build my own, with roots deeper than yours." Then came Amara, barefoot, voice clear. "I forgive the man who tried to name me. I embrace the woman who bore me. And I walk beside the boy they threw away, because he walks like thunder." The people cried out. And somewhere, in the distant city, a mirror cracked again. Late into the night, under a sky littered with stars, a final ritual began. The elders brought out the drum of names, a massive instrument carved generations ago, struck only when truth was finally heard. Tali was invited to strike it, but instead, he stepped back. He gestured to a little girl in the crowd. "Let her strike it," he said. "Why?" asked a griot. "Because this is not about me. It's about the next voice, the next child, the next truth." The girl stepped forward. She struck the drum, and the sound that echoed was not thunder. It was a heartbeat, one that the whole land felt. The moon rose in full, glowing like a scar that had finally healed. Mama Zama stood alone at the riverbank, her feet sunk in the silt. In her hands, she held the ashes of the cloth of the dead, wrapped now in palm leaf. Behind her, the world stirred, drums silent, people sleeping, truth still echoing in the soil. She whispered to the moon, "You once turned away, but now you see. May you carry this ash to the place where silence first began, and let it bloom." Then she released the bundle into the current. It floated, spun, and disappeared beneath the water. The river did not resist. It received. Far away, in a cold white room, Bartholomew Clay sat before a mirror, again. But this time, the reflection had changed. He saw himself, but not the version known to the world. He saw the boy who once danced with Zama beneath stars. The man who wept after signing lies. The father who tried to bury his story and failed. He stood, picked up a pen, and began writing. Not a press release, not an apology. A confession, not for fame, but for peace. He mailed it to Makesai, and disappeared. Some say he went to the hills of Mbidu. Others say he became a monk. No one knows for sure. But the truth? He was never seen again, not by the eyes of man. Tali, Amara, and Mama Zama climbed the sacred cliffs of Ngatsi ya Kwanzaa, the first ascent. It was a place of sky burials, where bones are returned not to the earth, but to the wind. Here, they buried not a body, but the cracked drum. Wrapped in banana fiber and old silk, they placed it on a stone. Mama Zama whispered, "The drum does not die, it transforms." They watched as vultures circled above, not in hunger, but in witness. The drum remained still. Then, just as the sun touched the earth, its final sound emerged, without being struck, thud, and the wind carried it across the valley. Years passed. A grove grew where once there was only dust. Mango trees, flame lilies, acacia. At its heart, a small shrine bore three names. Zama, she who was erased and returned. Tali, he who was cast out and sang. Amara, she who chose grace over grief. The shrine did not beg for worship. It simply stood. Children came and left gifts, beads, feathers, pebbles with names etched. And in the evenings, elders gathered to tell a story. There once was a boy told to eat from the trash, but the gods fed him thunder instead. One day, a child asked Mama Zama, "Why do people lie about what they fear?" She smiled. "Because truth, child, has no skin, but it carries a shadow that fits all." The child thought and asked again, "Did the man who hurt you ever say sorry?" Zama said, "He did. But the apology was not the lesson." "Then what was?" She paused. "That I didn't need it to live." The moon once forgot her shadow. In shame, perhaps, or silence. But now she shines beside it, walking together across the night sky. Just as Tali walks the roads of many villages, now a griot of the broken and reborn. Amara teaches under mango trees. Mama Zama heals not with herbs, but with story. And somewhere, whenever truth is denied, a drum beats softly, boom, 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 reminding us that no child is born trash, that dignity cannot be stolen, only misplaced. And that the wind, the moon, the earth, all remember, even when we do not. If this story touched your heart, Blackheart like the video to honor every untold story. Speaking Head, comment with your thoughts. What part moved you the most? Bell subscribe to hear more stories that bring light to forgotten voices. Outbox Stray, share this with someone who needs to be reminded. You are not broken. You are becoming.